Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 17th day of June 2025. In studio I have Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa from Usawa Agenda. I have Moses Nthurima from Kupet. I have Geoffrey Munari from HELB and Wilson Sossion, who is a former member of parliament and a former official with the Kenya National Union of Teachers. Now, this morning we got a message when he told them that CEO HELB is coming. And they said, ask the CEO why the whole semester we have not received any funds, all of them including institutional funds. Back then, like 100 batches would be sorted and immediately the next day they are paid. As we are speaking, when you go to the official HELB page on X, formerly Twitter, they tell you, we are processing, we wait. Mind you, it's almost a year and an academic year to the comrades. We went there, demonstrated, and they still did nothing. We even suggested to the CEO if they have run out of funds, they write to the concerned ministries about what is happening, maybe the Treasury or the Ministry of Education. Up to now, hakuna kitu. Actually, we lost a comrade due to frustration and hunger and anger. Do you have a response to this?
Yes. Thank you very much. In this financial year, the budget that we were allocated for loans was 34 billion. And we have been able to dispense of all these funds, and we have been able to support students amounting to 34.6 billion. However, there is a deficit of 13 billion. Now, these monies we are still following up with the National Treasury so that we can get it through the supplementary 3, which we hope that in the next 2 weeks we can be able to be allocated. But what we did is that all the students were paid their upkeep loans. So that issue was sorted out. The issue that we have a challenge with is the institutional funds. And that's what the student is talking about. And I believe that by the end of the financial year, the 13.7 billion will be released and then we can be able to pay. It's not that the board has got money and we are not paying that money out.
So everything you had has been disbursed?
Yes, everything has been disbursed. We are looking for extra funding so that we can be able to support these students in the universities.
When did you learn that you'd require 13 billion shillings extra?
As the applications were going on, remember we were given a court order.
Yeah.
And for a long period of time, we could not be able to process any applications. That is part of the problem that we face this year.
That's what I'm asking. Do you know when this was?
This is after the court order was lifted in March.
March 2025.
25. From last year, we had been told not to process any applications. We were left in limbo. We had to appeal this process. And we said that that was hurting actually students. And that is what has caused these delays until now. If we had gone through the same process, even last year we had a deficit, but this was sorted out earlier.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you learned in March, when did you make the request for extra funding? We
made the request because we processed immediately in April.
Yeah.
From April till now, we have been following up the funds. You know, there's a process. It has to go to Parliament. This process has to be approved in supplementary allocation, and then it goes back to the National Treasury for allocation. Okay.
So what then happens? Because 34 plus 13, that is 40, is it 47? 47 billion shillings.
Yes.
And in the new financial year, what is the proposed allocation? It's about...
we have gotten 41 billion.
Yes, 41 billion. So still falls short of what you require.
Yes, the numbers have even gone up. You see, 41 billion does not also include that, remember we are expecting about 200,000 students who will be coming in. So we are looking at more students coming in, so there will be more demand. But this year, if everything goes well, we are more prepared. Number one, we are enhancing our loan recovery efforts so that we can be able to increase that loan recovery. We are also planning to flout a social bond, a LIMU social bond, in September or October this year, so that we can be able to supplement government funding. The other strategy that we have is to go to the counties so that they can be able to give us money the way we have been doing. We have worked with various counties like Kakamega, Taita Taveta, and others so that they can supplement funding for the people who are coming from their counties. We are also engaging various development partners who can be able to support these students. So we are not fully relying on government because we realize that there are very many competing interests. Yeah. The higher education sector was allocated 144 billion in this year's budget. That is 20% of the 702 billion. Which means that with the 144, remember we have universities that are getting grants of 23 billion. TVET sector will also get scholarships of 7.7 billion. 41 billion is going to loans, 16.9 billion is going to scholarships. If you add all that money, you come to 143. Yeah. Then 1 billion is left for operational expenses from the ministry to all the institutions, which is still very little money. That is where the challenge is, and that's why I'm saying we will have to get alternative. And this social bond is one of the key issues that we will...
What does social bond mean?
A social bond means it is going to attract philanthropists. It is like an infrastructure bond, but this is social in terms of attracting people who have got money to put into the education sector. We already have got a transaction advisor, and FSD is already supporting us on this so that we can be able to get alternative means of supporting higher education in our country.
So ordinarily, like I think the Ministry of Roads and Transport is issuing a bond to securitize the road maintenance levy fund.
Yes.
Then you talk about infrastructure bond that can be taken by whichever level of government. So this social bond, is it repayable?
Yes, we are going to take it against our book. We have a loan book of 190 billion. And then if we can be able, our target in the first year is about 6.5 billion, which we can be able to bring in and securitize it. We have a loan book of 190 billion.
Yeah.
We will take a social bond of about, we are targeting in the first year about 6.5 billion.
6.5 billion.
Yes, and this money will come in to support the students, current students.
So this is money coming from investors?
Investors.
You will repay them?
Yes, we will repay them because remember we are getting loans. Every day people are repaying their loans. Currently we have...
How much are your bad debts?
Our bad debts currently is, we have a bad debt book of 33.2 billion. Yes, and 122 students are not repaying their loans. However, I've said 293,122 students are not repaying their loan currently.
Not repaying. You know, I'll get to the other partners, but 33.2 billion shillings in bad debts.
Yes, not bad debts, money owed. It's not yet bad because, yes, because we are...
What are the bad debts?
We don't have bad debts as such because our loans are insured. We have a self-protection fund. If a student passes on...
So these 293 students, 293,000 students,
yes,
they account for how much of the loan?
They account for 32.3%.
Of this 33.2?
Yes.
So that's about what, 10, 11 billion?
No, it's 33.2 billion shillings.
Okay,
that is
let me ask
owed.
the question again.
Yes.
The 293,000 students who are not servicing their loans, they account for how much of the debt?
33.2 billion.
Okay, so 33 billion shillings is not
owed.
Paid.
Yes.
And you want a social bond of 6.5 billion shillings?
Yes.
That's almost 6 times the loans that are not being serviced.
Yes.
What is the insurance?
The insurance that they will pay?
That the social bond will be paid?
Yes, they will be paid because currently 290,000 students are repaying 69.4 billion. Yes. But they are paying on a monthly basis. So what we are collecting per month is on average about 450 million, which can easily service that social bond. Yes.
Okay, but because in a year it comes to how much?
In a year we are collecting about 5 billion Kenya shillings. Remember, if you take a social bond, you are going not to pay in 1 year. You will pay for a period of, let's say, 10 years. So that money can
But it can be cleared in a year.
It can, but why would you pay in a year?
No, I'm saying it can be loaned out to students in a year. And it's gone.
Yes, it's gone. And then the next year,
next one.
Yes, another. Sure. So you can structure that, and that's where we have a transactional advisor to be able to structure this instrument so that it can be able to benefit our students.
All right. Dr. Manyasa, your take about this education financing, because yes, there are gaps. You can hear him saying the budget deficits, but having to come up with creative strategies on how to finance this. What to do?
Yeah, I think there are gaps in financing education. The problem is that the solutions we offer are unstructured, and they do not respond to the needs. They don't go to the core of the problem. If we talk of, say, and CEO has just mentioned partnering with counties to support, that raises an important question. Where do counties get money to fund a national government function? When they are supposed to be allocated money as per functions that are devolved? Where do they get money to fund national government functions that are not within their mandate? And that speaks to the entire confusion that we create deliberately, I think, to allow pilferage. Why? Because we have spoken about why don't we structure all the resources within the Ministry of Education, all the resources that go to education, so that we know that this is the amount required to fund all our levels of education with transparency. Because we have had stories of head teachers are not being accountable. If we can structure and then openly tell Kenyans, this is how much the government is able to raise towards education as its guarantor of the right to education. This is the gap. And then speak to all these philanthropies that are in this country. We have institutional philanthropists. We have individuals who are philanthropists in their own rights. Yeah. I have been to a funeral of an old man, and I was told this old man has been educating 1,500 children across different levels of education, secondary, university, colleges. But he has left behind an endowment to make sure all those that were already enrolled will finish. So there are so many individuals within Kenya doing their little bit to support education. We could attract these individuals into a pooled fund if we operate with transparency and tell them we need 800 billion. The government has put on the table 600 billion. We have a shortage of 200 billion. How do we raise this money and be able to support? Number three, I think that it's important to set our priorities right. I have said this before, and let me repeat. I expected that this year the housing levy will be a school development levy and put all the money we are collecting from Kenyans, voluntarily or involuntarily, I don't know. But that money could go into upgrading our schools and make those schools worthy the name that they have, and make those schools the foundation in which we will build not just good futures for children, but a good future for the country. Because if you do not invest in education, you are not building a good future for the country. Number four, I think that when I reflect on what is going on in our education and public sector funding of education, it reminds me of the song by Crystal Gale. It rings with the sound of goodbye. I was in primary school when the initial free primary education died. Yeah. We used to receive books, they will cut them into half. When class 1, 2, they will cut them into half. They will give us books, pens, sharpeners. When something good dies, when a good program dies, they don't announce. It just dies quietly. So we just realized books were not coming, and parents started to buy. So slowly, schools will just realize that they're not receiving capitation. Unlike the fanfare that came with announcement of free primary education and announcement of free day secondary education, the funeral will not be announced. It will be quiet. It will be felt by those who are directly involved, the teachers, the parents. you just find yourselves having to meet and find resources. But I think that if we agree that we need a holistic approach to funding higher education, we need to create opportunities for the young graduates who have left school to get into gainful employment so they can repay their loans. Yeah. Because part of the problem HELB is facing today is that for 10, 12 years, young graduates have not been employed. Yeah? So when they're not getting employed, you can't recover the money that they owe. Mm-hmm. And if we continue to invest in them and we do not find opportunities for them to get employed and repay, we are sinking money into a pit. It is very difficult. I don't even understand how he's going to raise money to pay this social bond when majority of the young people graduating out of our universities and colleges remain unemployed. I think that we need to think broadly around that as well, as an important factor. It is, Higher Education Loans Board should be at some point almost self-sustaining and receiving only minimal support from the government. But that can only happen when the graduates are able to repay, and that is not happening for now.
And for you, Moses, yes, what are your thoughts on how really, I'll get to you 100%, how to really improve this financing at the higher education level, knowing too well there has been quite some serious challenges in court up until there was a go-ahead for HELB to go ahead and implement the new university funding model, but with a caveat.
Yes, I think, Sami, everything boils down to political goodwill. What we are lacking in Kenya is political goodwill to run our education system. I think our priorities are elsewhere, because when a government is elected, they immediately start campaigning. The priorities of this government is in raising money for empowerment of people at the grassroots. So in that process, the education will suffer irreparably, because I think there is this unfortunate belief that when you are seen carrying a lot of money in bags, that is when you are doing politics. But we must remember that countries have invested in education, and investing in the future of our children is where the stability of the nation lies. So you have seen that the government today is talking about accountability in our schools. Yet the Minister of Education, when schools spend, it is the Minister of Education that sends auditors to go and approve books of accounts. Most often than not, what the auditors do is that they ask for money. They tell schools, because your school is this size, we want this amount of money so that we approve our books. These are untold stories.
And do they pay?
They pay, because if you just behave like you don't want to give that money, your books will not be approved. Or they will be given issues so that you deal with them at a certain point. So I think we need to be serious about financing education, because the little finance that is trickling down the school, they are also being, waited for by the ministry again. So it is very unfortunate that the government can tell teachers that you are not accounting. We don't know how you are spending this money. Yet they are the one who approves the budget in the schools. So what I'm saying is that we need a political goodwill in this country to finance education, because we have no alternatives.
So what does that political goodwill look like? How does it come?
The political goodwill is where we want to go to education, and whatever budget that we give, we are able to give it on time. Because when we say that even schools collect money over time, we are delaying the future, the investment of these learners. So it is very unfortunate, because now we are blaming. We want principals to be seen, or teachers to be seen as they are collecting money, and they are not accounting. They are collecting that money out of necessity, because for quality delivery of services, there must be finances, which is not forthcoming.
Right.
So me, I would call for political goodwill. When Kibaki was with us here, he just said, I want to give free day secondary education. And he did it perfectly. And that is why you see today, the levels of our awareness in this country is very high. And that is why now people are taking responsibility of mobilizing themselves and telling the government we can't go this way. So let us invest in our children's education.
Mheshimiwa Soswan, your thoughts, especially on that question of financing of higher education in this country?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of things have been transacted here, even up to and including sports, funding of sports and activities in school. I think since the advent of free education, a lot of bad programs and bad practices have come in, and it has infiltrated the entire sector. And that takes me to what Manyasa talked about, transparency. We've thrown transparency out of the window. We've thrown accountability out of the window. And I think we are getting more and more confused in our operations of the education system. What we need most, indeed, is to strengthen the transparency and accountability systems within. If we talk about sports, sports is domiciled in schools. It is not domiciled in education offices. Schools decide which activities and which sporting activities to engage in. And therefore, any vote head of money that is meant for sporting activities should all be wired to schools. And then the schools...
But it is intended in the ministry.
No, that was a mistake. And remember, when the ministry started clawing back some of the functions of schools, including even procurement of books. Procurement of books is supposed to be undertaken in schools, and it is the choosing of books is the responsibility of teachers, as provided for in ILO UNESCO recommendation number 60. One of the duties of the teacher is to choose a book which to use. But when we allowed the ministry to claw back textbooks, claw back sports, it doesn't make any sense. For me, that is an avenue of creating confusion, and probably some things need to be investigated in there in terms of why are you asking schools to pay additional money to education officers to fund sports? As far as I know, and having been a practitioner, the sporting events and games, drama and music is funded through the organizations of the Heads Association and through sports and organized groups. We should maintain that pedigree system of running our programs in schools. But when we retain some money at the ministry, we create confusion, and it becomes difficult to engage in thorough accountability in all this. Then for funding of university education, I think the CEO is here. He should be able to confirm that in 2022, HELP was receiving 13 billion from government. And now it's up at 35 billion with the new administration. And in the next financial year, it will be at 41 billion. So really, from 2022 to 2025, because numbers don't lie, if we've enhanced by close to 30-something billion or 28 billion, then I think that is a very tremendous commitment by government. And this is where I answered Thuruma's question. Is government committed? Yes, the government is committed. We should also be prudent and accountable in what the money does, so that we are able to track and we can answer the concerns of Manyasa. That must be transparency. Are we transparent as a country, or are we going back to the counties? Where is the counties going to get money again? Yet it's not allocated to finance the national budget. When I look at Kenya compared to many jurisdictions, Sami, because we have been in this space for a long time, a good case has happened in Kenya, where government has really gradually put in a lot of money to education. If we talk about the basic education, where Thuruma represents, in this budget is an additional 7 billion shillings to convert 20,000 teachers from contract to PNP, and an additional, I think, 2-point-something billion to onboard another 20,000, which will bring to 100,000 teachers having been employed by this administration. That is no mean achievement. And that is the commitment from government. Government is committed, and gradually, as our budget grows, we are now at 4.2 trillion. I'm sure next year, allocation to education will be above the 702 billion. Let us appreciate as a country. And having led teachers in Africa, I think Kenya, I have a good case story for Kenya. It has put enough money in education. But I think we should put very strong accountability structures. Even when you talk of sustaining higher education loans board, of course, in a country where unemployment is a challenge, we may not expect the university students who graduate, where there's no employment, to really immediately repay back. And help thinking out of the box is a good thing. And that is why when government agreed that we are putting in more money in education and to higher education, but we must have a renewed funding model that will ensure that money is targeted to students who need more, so that then students from poor households are more financed, unlike before when we had the DUC model, and now with the new financing model, which is student-based and it does banding, then students from poor households are more protected and more financed. And that is why a lot of money is going to help. We must appreciate that, so that collectively as a country, we must work to ensure that as a country, as we put in more money to education, we must have in place very strong transparency practices and accountability. Let us not promote practices that point towards corruption, that we think some people are engaged in practices that are siphoning and pilfering money out of the education system, rather than letting money to go directly to the student services. And this should be protected from basic education to higher education.
Sorry, you've said that the government is converting intern teachers to permanent and pensionable.
Yes.
How much for that?
I think that's about 7 billion for the intern teachers, the 20,000 intern teachers who have been on board for the last 1 year. They will be converted.
I thought that was fixed.
No. They have not been converted.
It was fixed early in the year. Because
No.
When I look at
the other group that was fixed early in the year, let's have a factual institution of memory. The earlier group, that was about 46,000. But there was an additional more who are on payroll and they're interns. Those ones will be converted to PNP.
Yeah, because what I'm seeing from the budget
they'll be converted to PNP within this budget. And then within the same budget,
just a moment,
an additional...
Honorable Session, just a moment. From the budget statement of the Cabinet Secretary, he says he's allocating 7.2 billion shillings for recruitment of intern teachers. There's no conversion.
Now, 7.2 billion includes conversion of the 20,000 teachers who are on internship. There are 20,000 teachers on internship for the last 1 year. Those ones will be converted. And that the ones who were converted, absolutely, that brought a lot of debate, were about 46,000 within the 56,000. But then there was an additional 20,000 to make 76. Those 20,000 teachers are still on internship. And they will be covered within the budget of 7 billion. Yes, that will be verified. Because as a country, data should be open and should be available to all of us.
I think
if I'm making a statement that is not accurate,
different sources of data, but that's fine.
But that is a fact. From 76,000, there will be an additional 24,000 teachers to be onboarded on internship once these 20,000 are converted to PNP within this fiscal year. So it is still provided.
So where is that money for recruiting 24,000 teachers?
It is within the 7.something
7.2?
Yes, it's consolidated for conversion of...
This is indicated, I'm reading what is indicated in the statement. 7.2 billion shillings for recruitment.
Teachers. Yes.
Not conversion.
You cannot recruit 20,000, 24,000 teachers on internship with 7 billion shillings.
The figure is from you. I don't see it here.
Yes, that's what I'm telling you. Anyway, the 7.2 billion is for conversion of 20,000 teachers who are on internship, and onboarding of another additional 24,000 teachers to make it 100,000.
We will let the Cabinet
But we can clarify those figures.
Yes, we'll let the Cabinet
Secretary cross-check those figures.
know, because his statement is about recruitment of intern teachers at the cost of 7.2 billion shillings. I will check where the facts lie. That sounds wrong. But
no, that's the truth.
I'm saying
but we can cross-check that fact.
Where the facts lie.
Yeah, we can cross-check that fact. How many intern teachers
it's okay,
are on board? 20,000.
It is okay.
Yeah.
CEO,
additional 24,000.
CEO, you said that, and I think it's an important question that Dr. Manyasa raises here, that you'll be approaching counties to supplement funding to learners. What framework are you going to use?
Before I answer that, and it was also brought about by Manyasa, there is an issue of unemployment, which many Kenyans say that there's a lot of unemployment, which we do agree. But I just want to give you figures so that we can be together on this, and then I'll answer the county issue. From our figures, students who graduated over 20 years ago, 51,594 students holding 8 billion have not started paying. Between around 17 years ago to 12 years, we have 23,786,000 students holding 6.6 billion. These students have not started repaying their loans. And these are the students I'm targeting. Between 1 year and 11 years, because of the current challenges and the economic situation, we have about 230,000 students holding about 46,000. Those ones we can say they are in between transition. 46 billion. Yes, they are 26 billion, sorry. So we are saying in between, they are in between jobs and they are still settling down.
Yeah.
So what we are saying, the older students, you can imagine a graduate of 20 years who has not started paying. And we have gone even down to dig in the professions. 11% of active accountants, those are 2,420, are the only ones who are paying. 2,000 have completed paying. We have got 18,000 accountants who are not paying. And these are the people who are in private practice holding various accounting firms. When you come to practicing doctors, we have only 18% paying. These are 2,115. And we have got 11,701 practicing doctors who are not repaying their loans. When you come to lawyers, we have given loans to over 23,000 lawyers. Only 2,644 have repaid their loans. The rest are not servicing their loans. And you can see where the problem is. When people go out in the private sector, then it becomes a problem. Engineers, 24,803. 1,594 have completed their loans, and now only 894 are repaying. The best profession is teachers. Out of the teacher profession, 44,000 teachers are currently repaying. The only ones who are not repaying are around 3,500 who are in employment. So what we are saying is that you can actually see the problem is that Kenyans who are in the private sector who do not have formal employment, that's where our challenge is. And if these Kenyans can be able to repay, the current student will be able to benefit.
So are you certain that some of these professionals, like the lawyers, the engineers, are you certain that they're in gainful employment as you speak?
Most of them are in gainful employment. Most of them.
So what is that hindrance and how are you approaching it so that they start repaying?
That is why we are first calling on them to honorably come and repay their loan.
They haven't for more than 10 years.
Yes. Then we are going to use other strategies. Number one, we shall be able to list them with the CRBs so that when they want to access loan facilities, then they can be able to get a caution and then come and repay. That is one strategy. We also want to see whether we can work with the professional bodies so that before you renew your annual license, you can be able to get a compliance certificate from HELB. The same way, if today you are to be appointed a cabinet secretary, you will have to get a compliance certificate from HELB.
So what trick do you use with the teachers?
The teachers, the good thing is that they are employed by TSC. And once they're employed, the deductions are very easy. And the other thing, private schools have also been very cooperative. It is a noble profession where they believe when we reach out to them through the association, they have a private schools association, they come forward and give their details.
Okay.
Yes.
So talk to me about the structure that you're going to use to get resources from counties. They're already in trouble with the control of budget, and they actually want her out because she's denying them the decision to go ahead and pay bursaries to education, which is a national function.
What we are doing with the counties, and we have already done it with the, for example, Kakamega, we are working with them to look at which resources do they require as a county, human capital resources. Then we go deep and look at, out of the students that they have, how can we be able to support those students who have got a shortfall? Therefore, we'll come and show them from the national level, HELB can be able to support these students to this level. Then they'll come in to meet the shortfall, specifically to meet their human capital requirement for the county. If a county requires, for example, a cancer doctor, specialist, an oncologist, then they can be able to support people from that county, 2 or 3, to support them in the university so that in future they can support their county. That is the approach we are taking. If they require, for example, TVET graduates, electricians, then we will go to them. They look, we come up with a product for them, which we support people from that county. They get a facility through HELB, and then they'll be able to pay. And that money goes back to create a revolving fund specifically for that county. That money doesn't come to the national government. You are not supporting the national government. You are creating a revolving fund for people from your own county. But it supplements the national government because the resources that we would have used then will be able to use for other Kenyans.
What percentage of need would that meet?
No, we have done our math. If you go to a county, you can be able to meet because it's their requirement. If you add on to all counties, you can even go to up to 10 to 15% of the need.
10 to 15% of HELB's need?
Yes, not HELB's need, of the county. We are looking at the county.
The question I'm asking is,
yes.
First of all, how much money would HELB need to run this loans program?
This year we are talking about 72 billion.
72 billion?
Yes.
And you're assured of how much?
We are assured of 41 billion. And I want to say that these are huge increments.
Sorry, that's the exchequer.
78 billion.
78 billion?
Yes. We are assured of 41 billion.
41 billion is the allocation from the national government?
Yes.
So from your other collections, how much are you estimating?
We are estimating to get 6 billion from loan recoveries.
So that takes you to 47?
Yes.
You still have a shortfall of about 2021?
Yes.
How do you meet that?
And that is how we are saying if we can be able to get, even if it's 1 billion from each county, then you are able to meet that shortfall and even exceed.
Okay.
Yes.
1 billion. Okay.
And that is a modest figure.
1 billion is a lot of money. You know, some counties allocated some 5-6 billion shillings to run their...
No, I'm looking at it averagely. Even if you got half or even 100 million from a county, we were getting from Kakamega, we were able to raise 20 million each year, and it has grown to 100 million.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Many questions pending there. But Dr. Manyasa then, do you have any issues about that model? Because human capital needs for a county, meeting HELB, it's still education, and it's higher education, still national.
I'm even surprised that my county, Kakamega, would have scarcity of human capital as to invest in developing any. Because if they are doctors, we have more than the county can absorb already. And I think teachers, for instance, Kakamega County leads in the number of teachers who graduated and remain unemployed in the country. So I am wondering that human resource shortfall that county will be investing in higher education. I would agree if they're partnering with HELB on TVET, because TVET is a devolved function. To the extent that there is partnership around TVET, I understand. It's a devolved function. But for university education, it's just creation of confusion. There is no other way to define that. Because this country, first of all, human resources created for the country. The reason higher education is a national function is because it develops national human resource. It can now not be devolved and privatized to counties because there is no structure that the county will use to bond anyone that they train in that model to work in that county. There's no law on which they will base any bonding of such a person. So they will train whoever it is, but that person retains the right to work wherever they want. And they are Kenyans. The Kenyan government has a right to deploy that person anywhere in the country. So I think that any partnership to fund higher education with counties is creation of confusion. But I encourage help to partner with them on TVET. Okay. that will give you maybe more resources to devote to higher education if counties can supplement at TVET, since you now have TVETs as well within your mandate. But for me, a more fundamental problem is what Mheshimiwa Sosiona alluded to, is a tendency to believe that all our problems can be solved by money. So all the solutions we offer is we put in these billions, we put in this, we put in that. That is not the problem. The problem is, what is it we want to achieve? And what do we need to achieve what we want to achieve? If we are looking at quality education, which is a right for every child in Kenya, what are the resources that we need? Those resources are not entirely in money form. They are resources that communities can provide if we have proper organization. Parents, for instance, have been kept out of the education sector. Initially, when free primary and free day secondary came, some parents thought it was time to sit back and leave that responsibility to government. We have developed a new curriculum that requires parental engagement. We have developed a faulty parental engagement model where instead of giving parents space to engage with teachers, we have asked parents to become partners with their children in homework. That is not the parental engagement model I envisioned. I envisioned a parental engagement model that allows the parents to now sit with the teachers, to understand what happens in school, for teachers to be accountable to parents and communities, for the Ministry of Education to allow communities to own schools. Because in many of our schools, villagers carried stones on their heads to start to build the first classroom. When they have built that classroom and it has been staffed by TSC, then they are told, now even entering through the gate, you will come only on our invitation. The rules are set. The community ceases to have any meaning to the school. The school has no meaning to the community. Our higher education institutions have no meaning to the communities where they are. We were in a meeting having a conversation the other day and asking the question, how do we make universities relevant to the communities that they exist in? Why would you have a University of Agriculture that is doing research in agriculture and the farming communities around them never benefit from the products of research that this university is actually undertaking? I went to the University of Malaysia some times back, and they have a community hall within the university. And the role of that hall is to serve the community. So when community members have functions that they want to hold, they come and use that hall. But more importantly, when there is any new research being undertaken, community members are invited there. There's a conversation. This is the research we want to undertake. What do you think it will be important for us to factor into this research so that this research is relevant to your needs? And when these findings are being developed, the communities are involved and they become the first beneficiaries of any new finding. We have in this country universities that are doing research on livestock. Where are they based? They are not based in pastoralist areas where people rear livestock. They should be there, developing cures to various livestock diseases and everything. So we have, our education system has become alien, completely removed from the community that it is supposed to serve. Right from the lower level at the school, where once the fence is there, visiting is prohibited, even when you have your own child there, up to the highest level, where universities, which are charged with 3 clear mandates: teach, research, community service. They're teaching a lot. Some are doing some research, and I'm using my words carefully. Some are doing some research, and most are doing zero community service. And yet it's a mandate for any university. So we need to rethink how we want to educate our children and ask ourselves, what are we educating them for? We are educating them to be responsible citizens of the Republic of Kenya. What does a responsible citizen of the Republic of Kenya mean? I think that we need to revisit that conversation.
Okay. Now, as all this is happening, as I get to you, Mheshimiwa Sossion and Moses, there is a shifting policy directive in the financing of examination fees. The Cabinet Secretary spent some time in his speech last week talking about why he thinks you need to look at the cost of examinations itself, but at the same time, who qualifies for the public financing, saying that households that can afford should ideally not have the government paying for that exam fee. What is this at a time that initially it was free primary education, then learners would pay the exam fees. Eventually, I think it was under President Uhuru Kenyatta, then exam fee was waived and the government would pay everything. Initially, we had what you describe as DUC, differentiated unit cost of education. Now, eventually, there's the banding of children. And these are the children of taxpayers who contribute to the lion's share of the taxes, if you have to look at the pay-as-you-earn and, of course, the businesses, which is about 1.1 trillion shillings collectively. What is going on that you continue to defund children because of where they come from?
As I answer that question, I think Manyasa has raised a very fundamental question about institutions being linked with communities. And we are implementing education within the framework of Vision 2030, Kenya Vision 2030. Nothing much has changed. There is nothing new. And during Kibaki administration, there was a policy framework that all counties at least must have universities, so that the courses and programs being offered are linked to the development of the community. And it's not any different with the bottom-up economic agenda, because the universities have to speak to the enterprises and whatever activities that are going on in communities. I only wanted to buttress the opinion of Manyasa that all institutions must be owned by communities, including schools. They must know what is happening. They must know all activities. They must know how they benefit, so that privileges and rights of communities should not be taken away simply because government is funding. That was a mistake that you removed.
But that doesn't
remember, during Kibaki's administration,
jobs, right?
During Kibaki's administration, like there was a school procurement committee for books and for everything, and you would display on the notice boards the money that has come from government and what it has done. Over time, that was thrown out of the door. And not just thrown out of the door, the parents were also pushed out. That is not right. We should bring parents and to account for every activity that goes on in school, how much money has been received from government, what it has been used for, and that's a good practice. If really we want to mount quality education, we cannot talk about quality education when we are aging out the very critical stakeholders within. Same case with universities, where universities are domiciled. They must be linked to communities, and communities must appreciate the outreach services and community development and the impact that universities have. So I thought that statement by Manyasa is very important to underscore because it cuts across. It even speaks to the problem that that Nduruma was talking about schools. When parents of school A decide that they're leaving money to build a laboratory and to build additional classrooms, it is out of deep involvement and deep consultation. And such practices should be promoted. To the exams and the policy that government is talking about, to me, it was even populist for government previously, that was Jubilee administration, to come up and say, we are paying fees for every child. That was populist. Because now there's the argument of, should we pay for those who are able and those who are, like private schools. Private schools are private enterprises, and those are able parents who can even pay examination fee. Is it right for government to finance programs that are related even to private enterprises? Because I believe the sole duty of government is to finance public education. But that is still an item to debate about. What Mbadi is talking about in examination reforms is the huge cost. Like, for example, where do we print our exams? We go and print it in London, very expensively. Are we able to print it locally and still secure the same exams so that they don't leak and we scale down the cost? And what of the other general programs that are related to exams? Are we able to do them differently in a manner that is going to reduce the cost? Some resources are limited. Even when you look at the budget, a budget of 4.2 trillion, education has taken 7.2 trillion. If that 4.2 was to reduce, 702
billion.
702 billion, yes. If that budget was to reduce to 3.5 trillion, you know it will also reduce. If it expands the same way. Resources are limited. Are we as a country, and there's been a lot of talk, even in the country, about bursaries. The president is giving bursaries, the governor is giving bursaries, the MP is giving bursaries, the women rep is giving bursaries. There are so many, but are we able to consolidate this and stream them so that really we don't ask anybody to pay any fees and finance our education? There is what we call proper use and proper utility of our resources. Yep. Are we able to weed out areas that can be weeded out in terms of expenses? So let me ask you, Mheshimiwa, so that we direct you call it populist. The limited.
You call it populist,
but populist.
Why in the first place was it waived? What are the reasons?
Was there public participation even to discuss this?
Sorry.
There wasn't.
I'm asking.
There wasn't.
Were there challenges with some children unable to afford the examination fee?
Not really.
Not really.
Not in public schools. Of course, there are poor children who can't pay. Those ones should have been targeted. But I think paying for all the children in public schools is a good thing. It's something I would still vote for. But then the other arguments that Mbadi is coming up with, like, must we continue printing our exams in London? Those are fundamental questions.
So for you, you think we should waive examination fees for learners in public institutions?
Absolutely.
And for private institutions, they should pay?
That was not necessary. It wasn't. Okay. You cannot finance private programs when you can't adequately.
It's not a private program, but that's a national examination.
No. Private programs in the context of private schools. Why do you start private enterprises? Are private enterprises financed by government?
They're not necessarily.
Once you enroll your child in a private school, then all the financing should be undertaken private.
So let me ask you, why do investors invest in private institutions, in your view?
It's a business.
You don't think there's a need that the government is not meeting?
It's a business reason because there's a gap. And that is why for me, and I've stood for this for a long time, the more you fund public schools fully and you deliver on quality, then the need for private actors coming in will diminish gradually.
Okay.
And of course,
you agree
under Article 53 of the Constitution, education is a fundamental right for every child and must be provided by the state. Okay. And that is why the little resources that are available, channel them to public schools.
Okay.
And protect public schools. And if we have our public schools doing well, and I think gradually over time with the free education, the public schools are doing fairly well. The education outcomes are getting stronger and stronger. So the little resources that are there continue pumping them.
Do you believe what you're saying, Mheshimiwa Sosion?
I believe.
That the quality of education in public institutions is getting better?
Of course, compared before free education, yes, indeed. The gross enrollment has gone up.
Enrollment is not quality.
No. And even outcomes, if really we are to do thorough assessment, they are doing far much better to the extent that many parents may not be taking children again to private schools.
Because they can
afford. There is an issue of
that's fine,
the rising privatization and protection of delivery of quality public education.
Right.
The little resources available with the state, direct them to public education. You have no business as a government.
Nthurima, what's your take about this shift that don't waive fees for every other child?
I think, Sami, Kenya is a community within the international community of civilized nations. And those countries that have developed, if you go there, like you go to Switzerland, where we were the other day, we go to Finland, we go to those countries which are doing well, education is free and compulsory. And this country has enacted a constitution that has an article where education is free and compulsory. The freeness and the compulsoriness of that education must be understood from within that context. What the government is doing is that slowly, without telling anybody, they are privatizing and commercializing education. When you delay capitation, you interfere with the quality of education in public schools. And that is what the government has done systematically. When now a band is struggling to explain that we want to partner, we want to look at who is in need to pay for the exams, it means that the government is running away from the laws that we have made, that education is free and compulsory. So if it is free and compulsory, it is for all the learners, including those who are going to private schools, because education is public good. There is no child who is private. All children are children of this country. If you look at the budget today, you'll be shocked. There is no single cent for teachers' salary increase. Last year, SRC wrote a circular to government agencies that they should commence negotiations for the next cycle of CBAs. Up to now, we have not seen any, and particularly the TSC, it has not called teachers. So we are going to have conundrum in the third term. And if it is when Sosion was in the union, he would start now organizing for strikes. Because he was very good at that. But we didn't want to go to that direction because once public schools start going on strike, it means again parents will run away to private schools. So we want the government to stick to funding education. And funding education, you cannot leave teachers impoverished. When you impoverize the teachers and the ones that delivers this education, then it means there will be a lot of... Right. I want to say that there is a lot of disparities in the pay of teachers. One, the chief principal earns about 200,000 per month, and the lowest earning teacher is at 5,000. That disparity is immoral. We wanted to bridge those disparities because there is a lot of infighting within the staff rooms. Because when you order you tell somebody go and do this, he tells you earn more than me.
Yep.
And those are some of the things that are not accepted internationally, because the gap between the highest earning in every environment should not be more than 25%. So we're saying that the government should consider allocating money for the CBAs, because the CBAs are ending towards the end of this month, and a CBA is vacated by another one.
Okay.
So education sector, sorry to say, is in a lot of confusion, because the government is picking in a manner that they are going to finance education, but when you come to the ground, you discover that there is nothing. So we are confused.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, I want us to close. It's 2 minutes after 8 o'clock. The feedback at Citizen TV Kenya, some get to the hashtag to use the Citizen Daybreak. What are people saying on this important conversation of education financing? Like Sean Laban, from primary to university education funding under KK's government is in disarray. There's no clarity on fees, and the support models under HELB and COOPS are confusing and inconsistent. The 2026-27 budget cuts have only made things worse. Students' learning is being disrupted, and the government has failed to act. Bob Otieno, the government is forcing schools to charge parents illegal fees because it has failed to fund education objectively or rather effectively. For example, capitation funds are disbursed late, and even when released, the amounts are insufficient to run school operations smoothly. This is deeply unfair to both schools and parents. Ngetich, please ask the HELB CEO to explain how deductions are justified for a loan that was neither received by the students nor disbursed to the institution. What recourse do affected individuals have? This issue has been raised time and again, yet there seems to be a consistent reluctance to address it. Again, like Ishona missed the old Nat at Sosion before he became honorable. Back then, he spoke boldly for students and teachers. Now, under KK's government, he defends a chaotic education system marked by unclear funding, endless levies, and constant disruption to learning. His new voice feels like betrayal. Whoa. Waima Shadrach. Some of the HELB funds for the last semester were never disbursed to our universities. Now, as we prepare to apply for subsequent loans, can the HELB CEO clarify why the previous disbursements are still pending? 2 questions for you. And finally, Sheila Sweden, Kenya's new budget boosts education with promises of more CBC classrooms and increased HELB funding, but glaring gaps remain, from teacher shortages and delayed capitation to underfunded ECDE programs. It's a mixed bag for learners, with progress on paper but persistent challenges in practice. Now, I only have 20 seconds for CEO because there are questions that have come to you.
Yes.
You have to say to them.
Yeah, I want to say that, and I elaborated that if it was not for the court case, we would not have this delay in terms of disbursement. So we are clearing that delay that we had. Secondly, on the issue that was brought by Dr. Manyasa from county governments, already counties are funding higher education with bursaries. What we are saying, let's convert those bursaries to a loan for sustainability in these counties, because it gives counties a full picture of how much a student gets, because we find there are students who are overfunded. Lastly, as I close, we have funded, HELB has funded 1.7 million Kenyans to date. We are only requesting that the ones who are not paying the 293, 122, to do the honorable thing, if they are able to pay, to come forward and to pay their loan so that we can fund the current student. Thank you.
Oh, all right. I don't have more time. I wish I did, because we could have continued a little bit more. But perhaps points to think about when you find that there's this continued stratification of Kenyans between the haves and have-nots, private versus public. Once upon a time, you would go to a hospital, and if you have an NHIF card, if you're not a civil servant, there would be challenges accessing service. If you go to a private institution, there will be challenges accessing service using that card. I don't know how the progress is with SHIF, but also there's a bit of stratification saying that SHIF can only cover you from a certain level of a hospital. Think about that as you proceed on looking into the public policy. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, Moses Nthurima, Geoffrey Munari from HELB, as well as Wilson Sosion, former Member of Parliament. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again some other time. Bye for now.